Hey guys, alright, so I'm going to give you a very brief demonstration on this. What we're looking at here is, of course, Gimp. We're going to keep using Gimp throughout our next couple lessons here. So what I'm going to do for you very quickly is I want to introduce you to some new tools that you'll be able to use for your next big project. The tools that we're going to talk about today are kind of a warping tool. We'll talk about opacity and how to drop down the transparency of a project. We'll also talk about layer masking, which is going to be like your new best friend forever. And we'll talk about color selecting, which is kind of like taking that magic wand tool and like upping it way, way more. Alright, so very first thing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up my picture that I want to start with. Now, in my case, I actually want to start with using a really super cool looking photograph. I've gone through, and you should have one as well, of a cool looking spaceman. So I'm going to go ahead and grab him real quick. Let's see. There we are. Alright, so here's my way cool spaceman. Now notice that it's a really big file, right? 2000 by 2000. That's lots and lots of pixels going on in there. What I'm going to do is this. Right now he's got a black background, so I want to rip that out and put him in a new setting. He's also got his cool mask, but notice that there's nothing really reflected on that, so we want to put a cool reflection on top of that. And then when everything's said and done, we'll add a couple little final nips and tucks to it as well. Also, if you take a peek right around here, he's got this cool arm patch looking thing, but there's nothing in there. So what you're going to need is to not only have the spaceman picture here, but also go out, hunt around online a little bit, be careful of copyright infringement, like I'm doing right now. Go out online and find a cool circular patch. We're going to warp that around on the side of his arm. Go ahead and find a neat background, and also find something that you're really super scared of. Cool? Alright. So assuming that you've already done that, because you're thinking ahead, I'm going to go ahead and open up my pictures that I've done. I'm going to do File, Open as Layers. I'm going to go ahead and grab these pictures here. Let's see, that's a picture of my wife and I. We don't need that. Let's see, there's my patch, so I'm going to open that. I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so we're going to use that. I'm going to do, let's see what else here. Go ahead down to T. I'm going to grab a cool background, and my background is going to be under the ocean, so I'm going to have a spaceman who's not in space. And let's see what else. Open as layer. I gotta find something that's uber scary, and for me, there is nothing scarier than hypodermic needles. They are terrifying. I don't care who says otherwise. So I've got my 3 layers here. Again, I can hit that little eyeball and make them disappear. Doop, doop, doop. Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is this. We're going to do a little bit of kind of green screening in essence, only in this case. We're going to do some, I guess, black screening. I want to hit this cool spaceman in a totally different scene. So if I click on the background with my magic wand tool, it selects him pretty well. I can even kind of get up into that business right up in there. Something else I could do is I could do a color select. So if I go to select by color, I can just click in the background, and it'll select anything that is that color. Now in this particular case, I also selected a whole bunch of stuff inside of him, and that's not what I wanted. So what I could do, if I was so inclined, is what's nice about the select tools. I'll just show you here real quick. What's nice about the select tools is whenever I've selected something, I can go ahead and add by holding down the shift key. Right, look at that. Oh, now I've got 2, 3. I can just keep selecting till the cows come home. It's great fun. So I've got some cool stuff going on there. But let's say I wanted to cut something out. Well, if I hold down the control key, I can cut and remove from my selection. Remove from my selection. You can see now it gives me these cool little number 7s. Now how does that come in play? Well, what happens whenever I do select color, clickety click, and I don't want this stuff? Well, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in real quick just so I can see a little bit better. And I could maybe grab my lasso tool. Now what's nice about this color select is it's going to give me a really precise selection, unlike the magic wand tool, which maybe my threshold isn't amped all the way up or all the way down. This will give me, it will select everything that's that color, so just like green screening in a movie. Only this time I'm going to hold down control. I can go around and start to select the things I don't want selected, which sounds kind of like a tongue-tied twister here. So something, I'm just kind of crassly going through here. Something like that. Kind of connect it up. And look, now that stuff's away, which is what I want. I can go through and do the same thing here and just kind of go through again. I'm just holding control, and that kind of takes care of that business for me. Don't want any of his arm disappeared. There we go. So now, again, you can see all these little tiny nooks and crannies. Instead of me trying to spend all freaking day clickety-clacking on him, They're now selected, everything's good, he looks pretty cool, although I gotta grab this arm patch up here too. Oh, let's just grab that. Alright, now we're back in business. Okay, so now I've got my way cool dude. Now, some things I can do, I could take him and I can remove him just by cutting and pasting. I can do a couple other ideas. I could select an invert and I could delete the background. But for the sake of example today, I'm literally just going to copy and paste here. I'm just going to cut him out. Now, right now, I have the black space selected. So I'm going to do select invert. So now I've got my spaceman selected. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. That'll give me my new floating layer. Remember to make a new layer, and that way, there he is in all of his spacey goodness. Okay, so now next step. I turn on my way cool background, and now he's underwater, a whole new world. Okay, so now he's floating around. It looks great. Now maybe I want to move and adjust my background a little bit. And again, you know how to use those moving tools here. I can shrinkity-shrink over on that. Let that scale up. There we go. I can grab my move tool and put him around town. So again, size it however you feel comfortable with. Again, we're just kind of having a little bit of fun today. I'm like the digital Bob Ross. I should like coin that term. Alright, so there he is, underwater man. Look, he's like grabbing a little fish or something. Okay, so now, next step is we want to go through and I would like to add a patch to his shoulder, and I also want to put the scariest thing reflecting into his space mask so that he is going into the great unknown. So I'm going to super zoom in. I can grab my tools down here, or of course, remember, I can always grab my magnifying glass and zippity zoom on in. Whoa, cool. I'm going to go ahead and do the most scary, terrifying thing ever. Dun, 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 the needle. All right, so if you didn't see there, I moved my layer on top just so that I could have my picture on top. I'm going to go ahead and turn that layer on, and I'm going to scale it down so that it fits the size. Now again, you can manually do it, or remember you can always do it with the numbers. If you want it to scale appropriately and in proportion, grab that little chain, and then you can just click that number, and away it goes. So we're just going to line this guy up. Do it once more maybe. What's fun about digital stuff is you really can't go wrong. You can't mess up. It's really hard to. We always feel like we can, but you really can't. If you mess up, you just edit undo. I'm going to grab my rotate tool here, and I'm just going to kind of rotate him around just so that he kind of lines up with the face a little bit. Now, what I want to do is start to kind of bend and warp this a little bit. Now, there are lots of fun filters you can play with over here where you can really start to distort things and bend and ripple and do a whole bunch of cool stuff over here, which we'll talk about in a second. I could also always grab this tool over here. This is called the Cage Transform tool. It's also called the Warp tool over in Photoshop land. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm just going to select everything that I would like to do. It'll take a second to cage, and then what's nice is I can grab these little points that I made, I can bend them, and it will kind of bend out my project. So the more things that I do, the more little points that I add, the more I can bend and warp my picture. Notice, of course, that it is in fact staying inside that yellow dotted line that shows the edge of that canvas. If you don't like that yellow dotted line, you can always expand the canvas, or simply just kind of copy and paste and put it on a new layer where the canvas is significantly larger. So I'm going to kind of balloon this guy out, something like that. That looks pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that will do that for me. I hit enter, and it locks it down in there perfectly. Now again, it's not exactly what I want. I want a little more kind of ballooning on that sphere. So I can go through, and I'm going to go ahead over into distort. And there's a lot of cool distortions like I talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and do, what do I want? Maybe whirl and pinch. That sounds kind of fun. Warp. Warp might be kind of neat. Let's see what that does. So I pull up my warp menu, and again, whenever you're bored, play around with these filters. They do some cool stuff. Just saying. Let's see, what do we want? Play with these numbers a little bit and kind of jack them up. It's not really doing anything. I don't want it. Get rid of it. And you kind of keep playing around with these filters a little bit. Stick in distorts for right now, but start to play around and see what you can find that will do the job that you're looking for. Right? So again, I'm going to kind of keep looking around here, see what I can bend and move and shake a little bit. not really what I'm looking for, but have some fun with that. Whenever you've found exactly what you want, we want to drop the opacity on this layer so that we can kind of start to mask it in. Now later on we're going to find that there's actually an easier way of doing this by actually adding in special layer attributes. But for right now we're just going to play with the opacity, considering it's only our second lesson. So I'm going to drop the opacity, you start to kind of see your guy there, and I'm going to play with the scale tool once again just to kind of try and fit him so that the whole needle is in his visor. Something like that. Now, I've got this reflection on there, and that's cool, but again, it's cut off by this picture. It doesn't quite look good. What I want to do is kind of fade out the edges a little bit. To do that, I'm going to take my layer, I'm going to right-click, and we're going to do a thing called a layer mask. So I'm going to add layer mask, and you'll see a little cool pop-up comes up. I can do full white opacity or full black transparency. What that basically means is this: anything that's white is going to come out as adding. The color white that I paint will come out as adding space, or anything that's black will pull away. For right now, it doesn't really matter for our instances. We'll come back where it does. But we'll just do white, so I'll add. So you see on your layers menu, I got these two little windows over here. I'm going to make sure that I have the big black one here selected. I'm going to grab my paintbrush, and I'm going to grab a cool paint brushy here. I want it to be nice and soft, and I want it to be relatively large. I got 40, that should work. Now, right now my paint color is black. So if I start painting, notice that it removes my picture, kind of like an eraser. But what's cool is, if I grab white paint, I can reapply that picture. It comes right back. Layers are really super useful as you're going along, and we're going to find a lot more uses for them as we're going. But for right now, all we want to do is kind of soften up the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do just that. Soften that edge. So it's kind of like using the eraser tool. It's kind of like the project we did in the past here. But the problem again with that comes down to we were having some issues where it just didn't look too crisp. Now here's the kicker. Right now it's cool, it looks like a reflection, it's great, but it doesn't really fade, right? It kind of just fuzzes. But if I drop the opacity on my paintbrush, so now I'm not applying black paint but like see-through black paint, then I'll start to erase with my transparency. Right? Now we're going to talk about different ways we can blur this and stuff too later on. Again, we're just kind of talking loosely for right now. I'm going to drop the opacity again. And again, I can just kind of keep going to town, adding more and more, until eventually it starts to feel like a cool reflection. Now again, this is definitely by no means perfect, and that's just fine with me. But as you go along, as you're spending a little bit more time on yours, less than 15 minutes for me, it'll start to feel much more transparent. Really play with that opacity in your paintbrush, and you're going to have a pretty good time with it. Okay? So, something like that. When I zoom back out, it should be relatively subtle, but it is definitely there, and that's kind of what we're going for that reflection. It's there, but not perfect. So you've played with your filters, you've played around with those distortion filters, you've played with your layer mask, you've warped your picture a little bit. You've done a color selection to give him kind of this cool green screening effect, so now he's in a new universe. And you can do the exact same thing with your way cool patch as well. So say, for example, that I've got my patch, in this case, I wanted a Star Wars patch. You should have enough knowledge on how to go ahead and select out that background. I could use a circle select, I could use a magic wand, or I could use a color select. Then I want to go through, now that I've got my cool patch, I want to shrink that down. I want to warp it so that it looks like it's kind of on the shoulder of this guy. And then I want to be able to start to go through, and finish things up. That bell tells me that I am out of time. So, with everything being said, hopefully that helped you out a little bit and reminded you what we talked about in class. Other than that, I will see you soon. Bye.